and welcome. I'm Cassidy Cash, and this is the show where we go behind the curtain and into the real life and history of William Shakespeare. If you like history, chatting, and random facts, as well as exploring things like coffee, recipes, foods, and just fun things we can find from history, then this is the place for you. Hit that like and subscribe button because we're here every week. This week, we're talking with the authors of Shakespeare's Violence. It's a brand new book. It's out now. You can find it in the link below this video by Jared Kirby, our good friend, who you may remember from the Art of the Sword documentary that we did. That won an award. You can see the awards that our documentary won last year, also linked below this video. But Jared is back on our podcast with his good friend, Seth Duerr. Together, the two of these guys have been staging Shakespeare's plays for over 20 years. They have a wealth of experience. And today, they're going to share with us about one scene with Ophelia in Shakespeare's play, Hamlet. The contention they make in their book is that textual evidence leads them to think Ophelia might have been the victim of domestic abuse. That's a huge statement to make, I think, and Jared and Seth are here to share with us what it was about the text in Shakespeare's Hamlet that made them think that, as well as what the history looks like for how they interpret the ways that playing companies should perform this play, or that they would recommend. As professional stage fight directors and professional directors of plays in general, both running professional companies today, making these decisions is something they're very familiar with. So we just sat down and asked them, when you wrote this in your book, what did you mean? And where did you find the textual evidence for these things? And here's what they had to say. Hello, Jared and Seth. It's nice to have you here with us. Jared, it's so glad to welcome you back. And Seth, it's nice to have you here for the first time. So glad you're here.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
In Shakespeare's Hamlet, one of the most moving scenes is when Ophelia goes mad. In the book Staging Shakespeare's Violence, Jared and Seth outlined that Ophelia's actions are up to interpretation, but they say that she should at least, quote, have a bruised wrist and sore arm and still be dealing with the shock of what has occurred, end quote. Jared, explain for us what evidence you were able to put together that led you to believe Ophelia's minimum circumstances should involve these injuries specifically.
Thanks. This comes right from the text. So, Seth, it's 2-1?
Yeah.
Yeah, just have to make sure. In 2-1, Ophelia's reporting her interaction with Hamlet to her father. And this is where I'm sure Seth can quote chapter and verse. But she explains how he grabs her in that scene. And it's very frightening. And it's an element of their relationship that I have infrequently seen inform performances. So we wanted to make sure to bring that up and to make sure that Ophelia factors that in when she is interacting with Hamlet. He has been off. He has dealt violently with her. She's reported this to her father vis-a-vis the audience. And so it's something that needs to be taken into consideration, both in the nunnery scene and then again in her madness.
I was surprised to see Ophelia's performance of madness listed in the book on Shakespeare's Violence, because I consider the violent part of Ophelia's performance to be, of course, her suicide, but that's not even acted out on stage. It's an aftermath of her choices are explained in a description by Gertrude. So Seth, explain for us how you decided Ophelia was the victim of domestic abuse.
Well, I mean, not necessarily, but it has to be an option on the table. I want to go back a bit and say, when you're deciding about how her family works, what kind of father is Polonius? Because a lot of times we see this like sweet doddering old man, and I don't think that's particularly the case. This guy helped get Claudius on the throne. I think he's a planner, a kingmaker. And he doesn't have to be a nice, sweet old man type. He could be. But I think we have to take into account, and what Jared and I always press throughout the book, is examine all the things that aren't necessarily laid out on the page about each character, or 400 years worth of performances and what you've seen. And so one of the first things that leaps out to me when thinking about Ophelia is not just whether Hamlet's the first person to, get physical with her, but if other people in her life have, particularly her father. What we do know is that he uses her as bait. So I think if you're willing to use your kid as bait with someone who you think is possibly gone nuts, you have no clue how he's going to react. And she's already said, he held me by the wrist, or, he held me hard. And, so what kind of father is putting the daughter into a situation like this? What do you already know? And then working with your particular actors in a rehearsal room in your version of the play, figuring out who is this father, who is this daughter, maybe the brother too. I don't think he's abusive towards her. He seems to like her. But again, you have to establish what is this family like, so that they're just not some cardboard cutouts, especially in Hamlet. That's a danger, because the other players can become very one-dimensional with a character like Hamlet at the center. So I think we should explore everyone three-dimensionally.
I think it's an excellent question to ask, and highly important to how you evaluate Hamlet and Ophelia, certainly. But I wonder about the differences between when the 16th century, when this was written, and today. And there was a higher level of acceptable violence, certainly between fathers and daughters in the 16th century. And what was considered shocking for Shakespeare's lifetime is much different than what would shock a modern audience. We can say, no, using your daughter as bait's not in any parenting books that I've read, but but were they operating off of a different standard when Shakespeare presented this relationship on his stage?
Well, I think there's two elements that are captured in our book that I think are really important to talk about now, which is number one, Seth and I don't always agree, and we try to capture that in the book. Personally, when I've played Laertes multiple times, the big thing that unlocked that character the last time I played it was the director, Austin Pendleton, actually approaches that family dynamic almost the opposite, where in his mind, or at least when he presented it to me, the mother may have died very young, and that made the family unit extremely tight. And so that brought a whole new level to my performance for him. And so I like that option. That's not to say that the domestic violence option is wrong. And that's something we really try to capture in the book, is that we're presenting options, not how it should be done, but just things to explore, because your production will be better when you choose what not to do, as well as what to do.
So it seems there's a lot of domestic violence to unpack in these scenes from Hamlet that has to be accounted for when you're a director or when you're a player going into these scenes in particular. Questions that Jared and Seth are answering for us this week are just part of a full interview we did on Shakespeare's Violence. That's their latest book. And we explored not just Hamlet, but also Macbeth and the history of violence in Shakespeare's lifetime and how that impacts the ways we should interpret things that are more shocking to us as a modern audience than they would have been to the 17th century. You can listen to our full interview with Jared and Seth at castycash.com/episode 201 or wherever you get your podcasts. Please do like and subscribe to our podcast. We have new episodes every Monday. If you like the bonus history, like video versions we're sharing a snippet of with you here today, then you will want to consider becoming a patron. Patrons get exclusive access to our digital streaming app here at That Shakespeare Life, which includes not only video versions of our podcast, but also documentaries, animated plays, and bonus episodes. We have all of that packed in over there, and patrons at all levels get access to our digital streaming app. So if you like video versions of our podcast, documentary films about the 17th century England, Scotland, and Wales, then you will want to check out becoming a patron with us. Additionally, patrons also get to have monthly events that we host over there, because I like to think it's really the best little Shakespeare club we could put together. We talk about Shakespeare. I share extra history when I'm researching episodes like the one we just did today. I put the extra research that I do over there for patrons. So any kind of extras I can give you, I put them over there. And then we also have regularly scheduled events that go out once a month. And so it's a great place to support the work we do here and help us make more episodes and talk with more guests and just bring you more Shakespeare history in general. If that sounds like fun to you, then join us inside at patreon.com/thatshakespearelife. And don't worry about remembering the URL. I'll place links to these below the video right here on YouTube. So you can just click and go and check that out. But that's it for this week. I'm Cassidy Cash. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.